Okay, thanks, Danielle.
Thanks, Sam. Hi, everyone. My name's Danielle Ryan. I'm one of the conservation campaigners at the National Parks Association of New South Wales. Welcome to all members and people who are just joining as supporters of NPA tonight. We're really lucky because we have some 3 case studies from along the coast of New South Wales with people fighting really hard to protect their beautiful backyard. And they've all come tonight joining us to talk about zombie developments or inappropriate developments that may be part of tonight. We welcome Jordan and Jacob, who are going to share a heartfelt environmental film about their fight to stop a zombie development from going ahead in Tura Beach down south. And then their presentation will be followed by another local film, plus a presentation by Voices of Southwest Rocks, another community who are fighting against unbridled native vegetation clearing, which is pushing wildlife and habitats further to the brink of extinction. And then we're going to hear from Greg Clancy, who used to be the president of the Clarence branch up north, and he's been fighting developments on floodplains, which will be another very interesting case study. And as the Deputy Mayor of the Clarence, he's very well positioned to also give everyone out there tonight some tips and tricks on how to, I guess, delay and fight these developments. During the Q&A, we welcome you and the panelists to share ideas on how we're going to, I guess, create reform in this space. So again, welcome tonight. And if you have any questions along the way, please put them in the Q&A box if you just have a look at the bottom of your screen, and any just ordinary comments you can place in the chat. So tonight we're going to start with Jordan and Jacob, if you want to just give everyone a wave so they know who you are. So they're going to start off by introducing their film. They're 2 young filmmakers who've now created a wonderful youth movement called Crunch Time, since their film has attracted a really big youth movement down south. So they really created a very impressive campaign. So I hope you're as excited as I am to watch their film and to hear from them tonight. Over to you, Jacob, and to Jordan.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Danielle, and good evening, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. I'll start by introducing myself, and then I'll throw it over to Jordan to introduce the film. My name's Jacob Shields. I live on the far south coast. I'm a young project coordinator, teacher, and activist, and I'm incredibly passionate about community and diversity of all kinds. And together with my epic partner, Jordan, we've created something pretty special, and we're just so excited to be sharing it tonight to such a big audience. So thank you so much to everybody for coming out, and I'll let Jordan introduce the film and himself.
That was amazing. Thank you, Jacob. Hey everyone, I'm Jordan. I'm I guess you can say filmmaker from the far south coast of New South Wales. And yeah, our film is Crunch Time, which started as a bit of a little side project, and then sort of snowballed into this massive film, and now it's sort of become a movement, and now an organization that Jacob runs. And we're very proud of it, and we're really happy that it's taken the shape it has and has started to create conversation, which is the goal of it, was to create awareness and spread the word, which it now has, and being given the opportunity to continue to do so in this webinar is awesome. So yeah, we really hope you enjoy Crunch Time, and yeah, over to you, Danielle.
Fantastic. Just for those who may have a bit of trouble with bandwidth, you might be on your iPhone, for example. I've just included the link to the film in the chat. It will just go straight to the YouTube link, so you can watch the film right now and then come back in afterwards to continue this webinar. So yeah, So let's get started. Who has the link? I can't remember. Was it Jacob?
I think I'm going to be sharing it.
Oh, yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
So I'll do that now.
Thank you.
Sorry, everyone. It looks like the audio is not coming through. I'm just going to try and fix that. So just bear with me. It was working before. Let's try this. Okay, let's try this. Sorry, can everyone hear that now? Can I get a thumbs up from the panelists if the audio is coming through? No audio. Okay. I'll try one more thing.
Sam, do you want me to try?
How's that?
Still no.
Lara, if you think you can do it, what do you think, Sam? Should Lara give it a go?
Yeah, so it's not coming through at all?
No.
Sorry, folks. It was working before, so yeah, Lara can do that. That'd be great. Yeah, that's working.
The issue that we're facing here is one that was only made known to us very recently. A piece of this native bush with beautiful old growth trees and which is a home to all these endangered species is set to be cleared for development.
Essentially, we've got a development that was approved a long time ago under completely different legislation, and somehow that approval remains valid, which is very unusual. Looking at the computer database, it's mapped as biodiversity values. You cannot clear that without current assessment. It must be done within the last 14 days of gaining approval. Not 14 years, 14 days. It's got to be that current.
So the issue here is that we're not accepting the fact that this 33-year-old decision to clear this piece of bush still stands. What we're dealing with here is something called zombie DAs. Zombie DAs refer to development applications which have been approved decades and decades ago on ancient legislation that is no longer applicable. And these zombie DAs allow for the destruction of native forest all up and down the coast of New South Wales.
They'll bulldoze the entire site, cover a fair bit in concrete, rip the rest of it up, put in exotic lawn, this sort of stuff. Well, it's likely you just get, localized extinction of everything on site.
I can't find words other than senseless violence when you think it might be, you know, in this day and age, 2022, possibly cut down. You know, it just doesn't make sense.
There are several stages to the development, and this is stage 13 that we're dealing with. And actually, it's one of many stages. And this isn't an issue that some people don't know about. This bushland that we're talking about now is only one of many steps of more development that's going to happen all the way down around Back Lagoon, back onto Short Point Beach. So it's a really is a massive issue. If we allow this chain of destruction to happen, it's going to be a serious disaster for everybody.
We're just seeing these unprecedented ecological disasters, which have been predicted for a long time, that if global warming occurs, the severity and frequency of these major events will become more common. And now we're seeing it happen.
It's been labelled the worst fire season ever into the gates of hell.
You know, this forest was spared from some pretty catastrophic fires in 2019. This is like a little paradise, a little haven. These little forests that didn't get burnt in that catastrophe. We're lucky to have this.
The value of what we have is increased 100-fold. That should be enough for us to make different decisions about how we develop our land.
You know, just big picture stuff, like we need to conserve nature. We need to address global warming or the planet can become uninhabitable.
There's part of a global issue here, but I think the important thing is that we can tackle it here locally.
People have come to this idea over a long period of time that development has to necessarily be a binary prospect. That is, you either rip out all of the environment and replace it with houses, streets, street lights and so on, or alternatively, you absolutely protect. My role in projects has been obviously to give legal advice to Friends of Crunch.
The acronym CRUNCH stands for Concerned Residents Uniting Nola Casuarina and High Crescent. It's an association that we've set up to be representative of the community's call to stop this zombie DA, and we've set it up so we can, have a real direction for this movement. It is a real deep love and a deep passion for me. Both my parents are ecologists. My dad, he was an amazing man. He unfortunately passed away 3 years ago now. But he was from North America, and he spent his whole life studying ecology, and he was, I would maybe even call him a genius. Like, he was seriously clued into, the workings of the ecosystem and very passionate about it as well. So I learned so much from him. When he passed away, I almost felt like he was handing me the baton, sort of thing. And my mum's also a brilliant ecologist.
As an ecologist, I would do a full survey of the plants and the fauna habitat features on site. I would write up an assessment, and often based on what we find as ecologists on site, we might have the input to the people that designed the proposal to change it to avoid certain species habitat or certain plants or communities that we have found on site.
So it's been really instilled into me my whole life. They made me aware of actually how crucial our environment is to humanity. If we don't have a functioning and healthy ecosystem, we can't live healthy lives. It's a crucial part of us. I was raised in this forest pretty much. Like, I grew up riding my bike and exploring these paths and just like going down into the bush, down into the valley there, down to Pages Creek. I still do. I spend hours just coming through the bush, exploring, going down into the valley, following Pages Creek. Yeah, a lot of memories attached to this forest for me, actually. Most of my free time would be spent, you know, out in these forests with these trees. So I've sort of grown up with them. So yeah, that's why I'm not about to let them be cut down in a hurry. I'm going to do everything I can to protect them. The Merimbula star hare, this plant right here, which you can see that this fence has sort of been literally set up on. This Merimbula star hare only grows in a tiny pocket near Eden and a tiny pocket near Malakuta, but its main stronghold is only in Tura Beach. That's a really unique phenomenon. Not many plants are that rare.
If you eliminate a big stand of it, you're causing a serious and irreversible impact, an SAII, which prohibits development. By current law, you can't do that. And so it's an anomaly that you have a development that is allowed to do that under current legislation.
The natural beauty and the natural features of this area, it's so important because this native bushland that I'm surrounded by on my property in Tura Beach is home to some of Australia's most endangered species. There seriously are countless endangered species that live in and around here. The yellow-bellied glider, the swift parrot, bandicoots and potoroos. I could go on.
For that particular site, there are two fauna species that I am particularly concerned about. Both are threatened, both in the state of New South Wales and also nationally. The yellow-bellied glider, which is one of the 5 gliders that live here on the East Coast. And the reason we have that unique species here is because we have quite a number of mature trees with hollows. That is an absolute extraordinary asset, and people need to understand how important that is.
It's a very special place. So here at the edge of Mirador, I think it's important that we try and record what's there to show people that these species exist. This is their natural habitat. This is how they're active. And it adds weight to the argument that a whole range of people are making about why this development should be completely reviewed and critically evaluated. The yellow-bellied gliders can't glide 300 metres. They can't fly. So they climb to the top of a tree and they have to glide into descent. And sooner or later they'll hit the ground, so they have to land in another tree. So when here tonight, we're looking at some of those beautiful black button bloodwood trees with big hollows. If we're lucky enough and we hear the glider about to emerge or calling, we mightn't capture the first one, but maybe the second one that comes out of the hollow. With wildlife photography, you try and anticipate the conditions and the setup as much as possible, but you have to be opportunistic and just see how things occur. I have minimal expectations tonight of getting something first up. It'd be nice if we've got some movement out of the hollow, it'd be lovely. And if we've got part of the glide, that'd be a huge bonus. David Attenborough talks about the loss of our wild places, the loss of our biodiversity, and those things are interlocked. If we keep cutting away by aggregate, hectare by hectare of housing development, then we will lose this connectivity that gliders need, and they'll become isolated. And we've seen in New South Wales the growing list of endangered species. We know we've got greater gliders now on the threatened list, and koalas.
The other one is the long-nosed potoroo, which is actually kangaroo, but it's very small, size of a cat approximately, which used to be really common on the coast of New South Wales, but It's very rare now. And it's another one which is listed as threatened, both in New South Wales and nationally. It likes to live in that dense undergrowth, which you find in gullies, just like the one that they're going to put a road in. That's where it likes to live.
So I was just curious to have a bit of a look for myself. Like, we obviously found diggings, which are probably long-nosed potteroo because they're known to occur in the area. But so we've set up a motion detecting camera, which will hopefully gain us a bit of video footage of the actual animal and confirm that that's there. I'm trying to address why should we care about threatened species? Why should we care about the bush? I'm bringing it from a people point of view, like, because we need to live on the planet. We need the bush to make the planet habitable for us. It can just be really important from a spiritual point of view. It can just be really important to be able to get out into nature and breathe air that smells like beautiful gum trees and flowers, and to see birds flying past.
I've only got to stand near this tree and I know I feel good. But surely just getting out and seeing all this has to have some impact on people. I feel really calm, really still. My mind feels really clear. I feel at peace. Yeah, that's what I mean when I feel good. In our culture, we were given two very important gifts. You know, those gifts were the rock and the tree, two sacred things. Using those resources, those gifts, we could live in a way that would be sustainable. You know, until we really begin to look at the other side of things, I don't think we'll see a lot of change, which is unfortunate, but you know, it's every day at a time. We need more people singing the same songs.
I feel that sometimes there's this image painted that humans and nature are sort of are different, but really we are one. We really have to work together. And yeah, that's what I see the future as.
Nature shouldn't be trumped. It should be primary concern and work around. Australians have a special responsibility because of our unique wildlife, that we protect them for generations to come.
It's for our own safety, really. The time has come, really, to start doing that.
You know, we have to think about development. It's death by 1,000 cuts.
We need to take a much broader view of development. In this particular case, a couple of alternatives, viable alternatives, have become evident. The first of those is looking at the possibility of a land swap with the New South Wales government. And the way that works is that the Crown Lands Department, who owns, manages and operates all of the Crown land in New South Wales, can make available other plots of land in return for this particular site. The second alternative is looking at the value of the site as a biodiversity stewardship site. We think, having seen the range of threatened, vulnerable and endangered species on this site, that there would have to be substantial inherent value in protecting this site. So the ball is really in the council's court. I think it's important that people in the community appreciate that they do have power, and it's very important that people don't just give up in situations where they think that they don't have the power to do things.
We have achieved some great milestones. The forest still stands. The forest is still there. People have come to realise how important it is.
as Paul Kelly said many years ago, from little things, big things grow. And the reality is that protecting a small plot in the broad scale of New South Wales, of this pristine environment, is a classic example of how these small inputs can actually make a big difference to the overall change. I think this is a perfect case study for how larger scale developments in New South Wales can proceed. And they can proceed best when private developers, local governments and state governments all work together to ascertain what is the best way forward.
Developments need to be thought through for a long time. Complex ecological assessments and surveys need to be completed on developments. We can't let developments sit for decades. We can't even let them sit for, 5-10 years. They really need to be constantly monitored. And when a block of land is approved for development, the utmost care needs to be taken to ensure that it'll be a sustainable development. Native animals, native plants need to be a part of development. We have the resources, the knowledge, the experience, the skills, the technology to build an amazing, sustainable future. We just need to switch on and start doing it now. If people start working for others and not themselves, if people start thinking in terms of the community and the long term, then I think a sustainable future will simply come about on its own.
The World Wildlife Fund, when that was founded, someone said to the founder of that, you won't save all of the animals, It's like, no, but by making some effort, by trying, we'll save some, and that's worth it. Okay, you might not win, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't try. Sometimes you've got to do it because you wouldn't, you'd feel like a coward if you didn't.
This forest is a symbol of hope. It shows that we can do something as a community. It shows that when we get together and all care about something, we can create change. I'm really optimistic that with this patch of beautiful forest, we've set a new agenda. I don't think I'm ever going to be done with this forest because I've got a relationship with it. It's part of who I am. It's part of my community. So, yeah, I think as long as I'm alive, I'll be connected to this piece of forest. In terms of the movement to save it, there's still things to be done. There's still people who need to hear this story. So I'm going to keep telling the story of the Tura forest, and I'm going to keep putting myself out there to do anything I can to protect it, whatever that may be.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jacob and Jordan. What a beautiful film. I hope everyone enjoyed that. You're both inspirational campaigners. Would you like to share with us a little bit more about your campaign?
That's if I hold back the tears. No, Jacob, you start.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to screen that. It's always good to see it. We've got a bit of a presentation. So here we go. I'm going to share my screen with you all. Everyone able to see that? Yes?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yep, coming through.
Okay, excellent. So I like to think that we're really lucky with how this all turned out. It was sort of a perfect storm, really, this whole project. our tiny neighborhood, which backs onto the forest under threat, was by chance just filled with the most amazing people, the most amazing community organizers with a wide set of skills. And we have them to thank for this movement getting up and off the ground with Friends of Crunch in Tura Beach. I was just sort of a bit of a hanger-on. My parents, as you heard, are both ecologists, and I was passionate. I put my hand up and quickly realized that my age was an exploitable asset, something that was essential to this community movement, and something which has since luckily given it immense strength and diversity, which is essential, as you'll sort of hear as a theme throughout the night. So the film really is about empowering communities to tackle a crisis which we understand is intertwined, the crises of housing and environment. They go hand in hand, and we did that through film. So we're going to take you through a bit of a story today. I'm going to go to the next slide. So the story is one in 3 parts. Part 1 is an ugly zombie. Part 2 is Wild Rise Bakery, and it finishes 9 months later. So I'll tell the first part largely, and I'll throw to Jordan for part 2, and then we'll both share part 3 with you together. So an ugly zombie, I mean, it's the perfect descriptor of what we're facing here in Tura Beach. As you saw in the film, this bushland on screen now is really stunning. It is stunning not only because it is so beautiful, but because it is so biodiverse, because it is home to so many endangered species. It has a thriving yellow-bellied glider colony, which uses those mature old-growth trees to roost in hollows, which take hundreds of years to form. It uses those luscious bloodwoods to feed on. And I have to say, living near this forest, it is, sometimes I have trouble sleeping because these things are so loud. And not only the yellow-bellied gliders, but I have a rich owl population, sugar gliders, grey-headed flying foxes, and a number of other night, nocturnal and hollow-dwelling creatures rely on this forest. That's not to mention the Marimbula starhare, which is incredibly rare, as well as the animals which live in the understory, the potoroos and the bandicoots, all of which are endangered. And also something that is sometimes overlooked is the swift parrot, which is critically endangered, which relies on this forest for feeding on its migration northwards from Tasmania. So it's a home to these species. And it is also a bush corridor, the last remaining bush corridor between 2 expanding spheres of urbanization, Mirador to your left side of the screen there, and Tura Beach to the right, south and north respectively. So this is a final corridor, a final avenue for species to access freshwater sources. So for that reason, it is just a crucial piece of ecology. And that's why the community here in Tura Beach and in the far south coast at large is absolutely up in arms over this thing. And the fact that this has been lying dormant for 33 years, approved under legislation from over 40 years ago, environmental legislation from the 70s is the basis for the consent for this development. Absolutely archaic. And that's just shocking and dangerous and irresponsible. So that, you know, it's a good motivator to make a film, really. So the story was already there. And there's another beautiful shot of the species, the yellow-bellied glider there. So as I say, the story was already there. It really was. But luckily, in the next part, we will show you the power of community, really, in bringing this whole thing together. And I'll throw to Jordan to tell that story.
Thanks, Jacob. So yeah, it's amazing the power of community, and I guess social media as well. I remember seeing the start of this movement on Jacob's Instagram, and there are a few pages sort of talking about it that I saw, and I really wanted to help. It was pretty moving what I was seeing, and I just so happened to bump into Jacob at Wild Rise Bakery, and it was only brief, and we had a couple of words, and I said, look, I really love what you're doing up there. Keep going. It's amazing to see someone our age doing this, because, you know, we're two young kids. Jacob was still in high school at the time doing year 12. So it was almost, you know, it's not very common for people who are doing their HSC to take on such a big task, but Jacob was just going in head first and jumping in the deep end with this whole thing. And so I said, look, I love what you're doing. I'd love to help in any way I can. He's like, oh, I'll keep that in mind. Fast forward a few weeks, we're on the phone, and Jacob's like, I want to make a video about it. And I was on board straight away because I was really inspired by what they were doing. Fast forward 9 months, we've got a documentary that we're screening at a cinema sold out, which it definitely took a shape we weren't expecting. But it was that's us. It was, and the premiere was quite emotional. I'm sure Jacob can back that up. The first time we saw it, at the test screening that we did, I broke down. I had a massive cry, and Jacob and I had a big hug. It was a massive sigh of relief, and I guess a sense of accomplishment, which we were both very proud of. But it's not just us. There's countless people who made this whole thing happen. It's the community at large. It's everyone who was part of the film, the people who came to the screening, and everyone that's watched it since. So it's not just a few people. There are countless people who make these movements happen and keep them moving forward. But obviously the face of it of the film is Jacob, and I knew I wanted to tell the story about the whole issue, but you know, people relate to people. We need to be able to see ourselves in a story, and so to see a young man fighting this battle, I thought that was unbelievable. So I really wanted to make Jacob the face of it, even though he sort of wants it to speak for itself. I thought it was amazing to see someone so, you know, driven by this deep-rooted passion for the forest and for fighting a cause that's, you know, beyond ourselves. So that was why I was on board, is just Jacob's story and the story of the forest itself. And you know, while the film ends on a high note, it's not a totally happy ending. You know, we've got lots we still need to do, but you know, hopefully by spreading the word, we can chip away at this beast, this ugly zombie, and you know, create some change. I think you're muted, Jacob.
Yeah, sorry. I'm unmuted. And that brings us to part 3 of this whole thing, is, you know, the culmination of what we did was the premiere, which happened in Merimbula at the Picture Showman in March this year. And we were able to sell out the cinema, and it was filled with a range of people who all came out to support what we'd done, which brought tears to both of our eyes. Like, it's stunning, the power of community that we felt in that cinema on that night to come out and support a piece of art telling the story of a forest that can't speak for itself, that needs human storytellers to be advocates for it. The fact that 180 people turned up to hear that story and to contribute their energy and their passions and their perspective to this whole movement gives me so much hope, and shows that the way forward is community. It is storytelling, and it is reconnecting with the natural world through art, through citizen science, through community organization, grassroots activism. There's so much power inherent in our small rural communities that just needs to be unlocked. There's so much that we can achieve. And Jordan and I both understood that on the night that this thing premiered, that this was the start. This was the starting point of something huge. We realized that, in the diversity of people that turned up, young people, First Nations ambassadors, people of older generations, that diversity, intergenerational leadership was stunning and so inspiring, and represents a success. It really represents a success. As Jordan said, with the consent for the development in Tura Beach has still been given by our council. And I really look forward to hearing from Greg later on in the night about what we can do to pull local governments' heads out of the sand, because that's still where we're at. The development still has a green light from council. Thankfully, the developer is showing some sense and isn't going ahead and actively looking for other options. And I like to think that some part of that stance is a result of the community uproar that we were a part of. So this is absolutely a success story. As activists, you have to celebrate every success. And we really, really look forward to the next steps, which I will quickly shout out. Well, this is the takeaway, the end of the story. The communities rely on diversity. That was sort of the theme of the story tonight, is that intergenerational, diverse leadership is the way forward, is the way to activate that inherent power in communities. So you have to have a diverse approach to get things off the ground and really pumping. And youth are such a big part of that. In an era defined by rapidly evolving technology, and where young people are literate in that world, they live and have been brought up in that world, as such a huge asset and have such a unique perspective. So young people are an essential part of that community diversity. And so Crunch Time's going on the road this July, where we're visiting communities on the South Coast this time. And I apologize to the North Coast crew. We've sort of jumbled this together in the last couple of months, and we're running a pilot on the South Coast. We're going to do another North Coast tour, which will be even better because we would have learned so much from all the things that will go wrong on this South Coast tour. But we'll be screening the film in Dalmeny, Churros Head, Browley, Manyana, Kalala Bay, and Tura Beach. Screening the film and running a youth empowerment session, a youth workshop geared at unlocking the potential and nurturing the passion in young people all up and down the South Coast, and leaving them with a project plan, mentoring them to get something off of the ground and and which they can bring to fruition in their community, whether it be a film like we've done, or whether it be some sort of other project that will help the movements in each of these communities, which are all facing inappropriate developments. So yeah, this film is the start, and we're going to press on until we get real decisive reform on this, until we get legislation with teeth that protects our environments and our communities. And I'm bloody looking forward to it, I have to say. It really gives us something to do. That's my view of things. It gives us something to do, that there are so many things wrong with the world. And I thank you again for all your support. And that's me. I'll let Jordan outro himself as well. Thanks, everybody.
God, he's good, isn't he? Yeah, thank you so much for having us on tonight, guys, and listening to Jacob's story, the story of the forest, and our story as a whole. So yeah, really looking forward to seeing where it all goes in the coming months with the tour. But yeah, thank you so much for having us on tonight. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Excellent work, amazing work. And yeah, NPA will be more than happy to share the details of those screenings, with our members. So very exciting. And in the spirit of intergenerational campaigning, I just realized tonight we have our 2 young filmmakers, and then up next we've got 2 mums. So the next generation up from Southwest Rocks, and then last but not least, we'll have Greg Clancy, who's a wise soul from further up north, who's been in the game for generations. So up next, we have Lara and Cherry. Excuse me, because I'm losing my voice. Lara and Cherry, if you're there, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, hello. Hi, everyone. My name is Lara Kennedy. I'm from Voices of Southwest Rocks community, and I've got Cherry with me today as well. We are basically a little grassroots community group who witnessed habitat destruction just kind of out of nowhere, and a very fast pace, and all of a sudden on a very large scale. And so we decided to mobilize and try to do something about it. We've had some successes, some losses, but we're going to keep trying. So I know there's a bit of like video issues. And I want to caveat that we're not filmmakers. Jordan, if you want to come to Southwest Rocks and help us out, you're totally welcome. But I will try and play our little kind of footage that we have. And apologies if it doesn't work. Imagine that Danielle will pop the link in the chat, and you can pop out and watch it and pop back in if that works better.
We stand here on salt water, Tangari land, from the mountain to the sea. We open our hearts, leave our footprints, and pay our respects to the ancestors. Rich view, I think this is that development, great drainage solutions. seagull nest. That's saltwater lagoon. There. Today for this beautiful Dungari bushland that is being destroyed in front of our eyes.
What do you love about this place?
I don't know. There's too much to love about it. The beaches, I guess, the beautiful trees and stuff that are still left in the places that are not being developed. The people, I guess, definitely the people, but also the ocean. So we really have a connection to the ocean out here as well as saltwater people. So yeah.
Well, I love the environment. I love the beach, obviously. I love the whole Maclay. I love that we have its little label is Nature's Wonderland. And I think all the time that I've lived here, that has been what really I hold strong to, is the nature, is the environment and the people.
Now, Southwest Australia in particular, I've known since I was a child, and I see suddenly this mad surge in development without the slightest regard for Mother Nature and the animals that live here. And they're a very important feature. And the feeling of having this small country village, yes, you can have residential and that, but you must leave trees on the developments. We have no infrastructure to support the amount of residential buildings that are springing up. And this place is based on a population has come about by retirees and older people, and their contribution is that now they need something back, and that is their health looked after. You can't get a doctor in this town. As population increases, the doctors go. So nothing's being done. And I myself have to drive either Macquarie or Pepsi to see a doctor. So some common sense needs to prevail in these developments. Supply what it is that people need, as well as very much Mother Nature.
I think for us, it's having that voice, and we find that voice with our community in speaking up about the issues that we have out here at Southwest Rocks, and how do we protect it for our future and for the future of our children and for the future of our Dungari country. So yeah, I think for us it's really important to have a voice so that people can hear what our issues and concerns are, and to know that we are here and we do need to be consulted with when there's these major developments and constructions that are happening out here, and what are our thoughts and our feelings on these issues. Yeah, I guess with the destruction, and it kind of affects not just us as Dungari people, it affects everybody that lives on this country. It affects the children, it affects the community, and I guess our thoughts. When country is destroyed, our spirits are destroyed. So in that sense, it's like our spirits are destroyed because of our countries being destroyed.
What Kevin has done, he tapped in the spirit from the east to the west, the south and north. We stand in the middle of the compass, all out of spirits, for cleanser. Their cleansing is a part of our culture, it cleanses the land. There's from the mother, the tree to bark to the leaves. This is the cycle of what cleansing and smoking ceremony does, it's healing.
Internet is not playing nice now.
Yeah, no, Lara, thank you. That was amazing. An absolute incredible video. It really gives you a feel for what it's like fighting these battles in these local areas. So fantastic films tonight. Is there anything more that you and Cherry would like to say in your presentation?
Yeah, we've just got some slides. I'm just pulling them up. And then I'm going to hand over to Cherry to kick us off.
Hi everyone, I'm really sorry I'm late. I'm gonna watch Crunch Time later, but yeah, I was putting little ones to bed, which is part of the art of juggling activism with motherhood. But thanks so much for having me tonight, and I wanted to acknowledge that I'm calling in from beautiful Dunghutti land and sea country, and acknowledge the custodianship of the Dunghutti people that has endured 60,000 plus years. You would have seen Nancy May on the film, even though it was quite delayed. Apologies for that. But yeah, Nancy has been a real leader in fighting this fight locally. And yeah, she's an incredible Dunghutti woman. So yeah, also wanted to acknowledge Jordan and Jacob, really, really moving film. And yeah, it's so inspiring and heartwarming to have young people like yourselves standing up. It gives me a lot of hope in humanity and for my children. Speaking of young people, my son was 3.5 when this kicked off, and it's been quite painful as a mother to see his reaction to it all, but also to see his common sense perspective on it. So yeah, he just can't make sense of why they're doing the things they do. He featured in that film briefly. He was yelling at the bulldozers to stop, and he asked me to call the police. So it's really hard to explain to 3.5-year-old why I can't call the police and why it's allowed to happen. Yeah, so we kind of kicked off about 2021, and it was really literally overnight. We saw fences go up on, thank you, Lara, that's the fence that went up on this beautiful big chunk of bushland that a lot of people have a strong connection to. They bushwalk through there, and this bushland goes over the hill and all the way down to the river. So it's a huge area, and a lot of people like locally know the site for wildlife and wildlife sightings. So overnight the fence went up, and then 48 hours later the clearing started. So it was just myself and a few women to begin with that we quickly called a snap action. We were quite nervous because growing up, I didn't really know Southwest Rocks to be hugely into activism, but within 48 hours notice, we had like 150 people show up. There was a bit of, so all this filming was done from 2 years ago. So from that first snap action, and we were just overwhelmed with the support that we didn't know existed. And we got a lot of media. We had local news channels there, and TV and radio and the local paper. So it was really good to get instant overnight awareness happening. So that was really the catalyst event that kicked us off. And from there, we've just continuously been overwhelmed with the support and people coming out of the woodwork with amazing skills and passion for our community and for trying to conserve this beautiful part of the coast. So that sadly that one was lost. That is known as Settlers Ridge, and as you saw in the footage, there was a lot of issues with after they cleared that bushland, we had massive floods twice in March. And so it was really disturbing to see all that silt running down into the stormwater drains and then out into the ocean. Since then, we've had like dozens of developments coming at us hard and fast. So it's been really hard to keep up with just how much the community's facing. And we've been completely shocked to uncover not just one zombie DA, but like half a dozen. So at times it's felt completely hopeless. I've had like bouts of anxiety that I've never had before, just thinking about what's to come, what's down the pipeline. Lara's just going to talk quickly about that. But these, we'll just quickly flick through these slides. I won't go into detail, but just to give you that visual representation, that's South Rock on the air and the famous Trial Bay Jail. Next one, Lara. This is really hard map to see, but the chunks of yellow are still areas of bushland. South Rocks is expected to uptake or to hold 56% of our population growth locally, even though our shire is massive and South Rocks is a tiny part of that. Thanks, Lara. I'll let Lara talk to these facts real quick. I'll just show you the, I guess, Lara, if you just want to flick through the photos real quick of all the other sites. And Lara's going to talk to this one as well, or you can come back to it.
Yeah, do you want me to jump in with some of the stats and the...
Yeah, go for it.
Scale? So essentially, as Cherry mentioned, we are slated to take 56% of the Shire's housing growth. We're currently a town of about 5,000 people, and we are, based on the sort of approved and under construction or potentially going to be approved developments, we're slated to get about 1,500 more dwellings. It says by 2041, but we actually know it's going to be a lot sooner than that because a lot of them are already happening now. They're starting now. So, just like in Jacob and Jordan's film, it really is, it feels like death by 1,000 cuts. It's just this constant like undermining of the natural values of our town. So a very controversial development that we are facing. So as Cherry mentioned, Ridgeviews was really like the catalyst for this. It was the first one that was kind of really out in the open that kicked things off. But one of the more controversial developments that we've been facing is known as Rise development. It's from it's a 1993 DA essentially that our council actually declined to award the construction certificate to the developer last year, and then the developer took them to the Land Environment Court. Council won in that first case, but then they lost on appeal. So the developer took them back on appeal, and they lost on what is, in my opinion, my opinion only, a technicality, which was that in the 90s, so council would not award the construction certificate on the basis that no works had happened since 1993. So that development approval was no longer active because there'd been no establishment works. The technicality was that in the 90s, Caltex had paid the then landowner to dig a hole and test the soil because there is an oil terminal across the road from this site, or there was. The judge this year said that is enough to constitute establishment works. And he said that Kempsey Shire Council, you have to award the construction certificate. So we now have this 1993 DA that the developer was allowed to go in and basically sort of clear fell based on 1993 rules and regulations. So in that bottom corner, that's actually the site before they'd done a bunch of the clearing. So all of that, pretty much a whole lot of that, except for the buffer alongside Saltwater Creek, is now gone. The developer is not going to go ahead with that 1993 development approval. They have actually now submitted a new development application, which is open for public exhibition currently. So land clear, they went in, they clear felled under 1993 development approval, but they're now going to go ahead with a more modern DA, which will be subject to new sort of biodiversity, the new Biodiversity Act, but they've already cleared the site. So that's our most controversial development that we are facing, and our oldest one. But as Cherry mentioned, we do have a lot of others. So Settlers Ridge, Cherry, did you want to chat back again through this?
Oh, yeah, just quickly an illustration of some of the values, like the tree you can see in the photo. There was nesting lorikeets, and that block that was cleared was full of old growth habitat trees, hollow bearing trees with nesting birds. That was all clear felled, which was gut wrenching. And yeah, just an example of the type of environment that's being cleared or slated for clearing here. Yeah, but as I said, like,
sorry, I was just going to say 2007 DA, but they only cleared it this year.
Yeah. So this has all come, as I said, hard and fast in the last 2 years, come at us. In the bottom right photo, there's a big area of bushland where we would love to protect in perpetuity. And so we're looking at different ways to do that. And again, keen to hear Greg Clancy's thoughts on that, and everybody on the call too. But yeah, the positives of this whole endeavour is our campaign has just grown from strength to strength. We started as like 5 people, and really overnight we just started a private Facebook group, and it's swelled to over 2,000 people. We can't keep up. There's still been a lot of media. The Guardian in particular was interested in the Rise development because it set such a dangerous legal precedent, saying that drilling a hole in the sand constitutes construction was really unheard of, and sadly made Cypress Rocks famous in all the wrong ways. So the kind of silver lining is it's shone a spotlight on these awful zombie DAs. I'm just going to stop there, and Lara, if you want to flick through the pics, but that's all I have to say. And yeah, ultimately our long-term goal is to conserve these last stands of healthy coastal forest, and also to add that since the 2019-2020 fires, we've seen a huge rise in wildlife sightings, including koalas, because their habitat is shrinking. So we really hope to conserve this beautiful coast and also the unique endangered wildlife that call it home. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, I've very quickly flick through some of these other developments. So we have Seabreeze Estate, which is another quite big one. And it, as you can see down here, very close to Saltwater Lagoon, which is very important wetland. There's another one, Steve Eagleton Drive, which is, quite a large, it was full of, once again, old growth bush before. This one hasn't gone ahead yet, but it will, it'll be another 80 lots, and those trees all at the back will go. Also, these two have not been cleared yet, but we're expecting the DAs to come through in the next, several months. So Gordon Drive and Colliers. So essentially we've got 13 development sites. 9 are either under construction or approved but haven't started. And of those, 6 of them are kind of based on these like old SEP or the state environmental planning policy. So they're changes, which I think happened in like 2017, I believe. and none of them have wildlife corridors. So every time they are cleared, everything goes. There's no corridors left for the wildlife. And then to Cherry's point, what we're seeing is lots of wildlife being pushed out to areas where we wouldn't normally see them. So we do have one biodiversity offset area in Southwest Rocks. These are some photos of what it looks like. It's basically being used as a dumping ground. There's burnt out cars in there. It's not being maintained. This is the state. We would love to see it, if ever possible, converted into national park so it can actually be maintained and used and appreciated. So there's a few things that we are working on to try and kind of stop this, I guess, and see some change. One is that we're working with the Coastal Residents United, which is a group that was kind of formed by Kate Pham, and it's a bunch of coastal communities along the New South Wales coast who are facing these sort of unsuitable, unsustainable developments. We're working with them to do these kind of a flash mob of petitions, I guess is the best way to describe it, where each town is creating their own little petition and we're all going to submit them into Parliament at the same time, which will just be the first stage of our campaign. We then will be sort of putting a lot of pressure on politicians to try and change this planning policy, because it's not good enough. Even our current planning policy is not good enough. It allows for destruction that shouldn't be allowed. It allows for the removal of hollow-bearing trees as long as you sort of offset it or put some nesting boxes up. And I just don't think that, I know that we cannot continue to do this if we're going to sort of save ourselves from sort of heading in a bad way climate wise. So if you are anywhere near us, and I believe, Friends of Koila, like Tura Beach, there's also Holidays Point, a few others, Manana. If you're in any of those communities, please let us know. We will get you to help with signing our petitions or distributing them. So please get in touch if that is you.
Fantastic. Lara, do you have a link for the petitions that you could put into the chat?
They are paper. So
okay, yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, so these first ones are paper. We will hopefully down the track be doing a big kind of push for a 20K legislative assembly one, but these ones are paper. So we need you to be local to sign them. Okay. And is there any information about the collective petition, like in case another group, like another branch who's listening right now goes, yes, we want to join in on this campaign? Is there any information that can be found online, or maybe we can talk to Sam about distributing some information afterwards? We also have so what I'll do, sorry, I was just going to say, what I'll do is I'll put our email into the chat, and I'll also put a link to the Coastal Residents United Facebook group, and that's two places you can get information.
Fantastic. And I'm sure Sam would be interested in an article from you guys in Nature News on the RISE development and how drilling a hole can set such a dangerous precedent for development, because that sounds quite terrifying. But yes, despite the heartbreaking news, you girls are doing an excellent job at campaigning, and I'm sure for everyone listening, just like myself, I find it really inspiring to hear from the different generations and their different approaches to tackling this issue. So yeah, thank you so much, Cherry and Lara. You're doing excellent work. We should probably move on to Greg, if Greg is around still.
Yeah, I'm here. Haven't gone.
So yeah, there's a few people keen to hear your presentation and to also seek your wise advice. So
yeah, well,
great.
The problem with being last is that everyone's waiting for me to come up with all the answers, and I don't have all the answers, but I can give you some experience, some talks about experience. But before I do, that's the last slide. Can we go back to the first one? Yeah, thanks. I'll talk about this in a minute. Before I do, I just want to acknowledge that the traditional custodians of the lands on which we're meeting, in our area where I am, it's the Gumbaynggirr people. We also have the Bundjalung and the Yagal people in the local government area here. And I'd like to acknowledge their elders, past, present, and emerging as well. It was interesting because I know Jacob's father, knew Jacob's father, did some bird banding with him, with Jim. We clashed a few times because he was in forestry and I was a greenie, but I really got on well with him and respected him. So thank you, Jacob. And it's great to see you keep carrying on the good work. Southwest Rocks is also interesting because I did a flora and fauna study. I think it was on the one near the Caltex petrol station, and it was in early days for me in my work, and I was told by a local down there that what I did was okay, so that was good, but it obviously hasn't saved the place, which is very frustrating. But what I'm to talk about, well, you want to know what to do. Well, for a start, council, at the moment, councils on the North Coast and the South Coast still have planning powers. Sydney councils have lost their powers generally, and they've got planning panels. We have a Northern Region planning panel, and I'm sure there's a South Region one as well. But we have two councillors on our Northern Region planning panel. That's the mayor and the deputy mayor, and I'm the deputy mayor, so I'm on that panel. But we have three state-appointed panelists, which makes it a little bit imbalanced. And we lost there was a development proposed, not in this West Yamba area, but near to West Yamba, and the panel approved it for various reasons, but I won't go on about that at the moment. So what you've got to do, I mean, before I talk about West Yamba, I've sort of been put on the spot that I've got to solve everyone's problems. So what I'll suggest is that that you look to getting people on your local council, and you may have already done that, and you may be doing it. It's really important to get people on council. I don't want to be sexist, but I think you need more women on council. Even though some women on council are not very green, but I do think that's often a good balance. And of course at Kempsey, you have Arthur Bain, who's your Greens councillor. So I'd hope Arthur will be helping you, and if he's not, make sure you get onto him. So I think the fact that we've got all these communities up and down the coast standing up for what they believe in is just wonderful. It's very frustrating. It's very upsetting to see the damage. But if we don't stand up and say enough's enough, we will lose everything. Well, virtually everything. So we have to stand up. We're going to lose some. I've been involved in a lot of campaigns over the years, and the National Parks Association in Grafton and Clarence Valley, when we first set that up, we went straight into fighting for the Washbill, which became a national park. In those days, you could actually win a few. These days, it's extremely hard, and even the legal system's against us, because you can't very well take anything to the Land and Environment Court unless you're the council or the developer, unless you can only do it on merit. Sorry, you can't do it on merit. You can only do it if there's been some mistake made by the council. So it is a frustrating situation, but I am buoyed by the fact that we've got so many people up and down the coast who are trying to stand up to this madness of development. But we do have a population issue, and we're bringing more and more people into the country. So we have to work out how we can address that without destroying our environment around us. And because, as has been said by some of the other panelists, we rely on the natural environment. We can't keep destroying it and expect that humans have got a long-term, existence on this planet. So what everyone's doing, I congratulate the panelists and the people listening in. Now, it's been said that I've been campaigning about floodplains, which I have, but it's not so much me. I'm the Deputy Mayor of Clarence Valley Council, and I'm here to represent the community. That's my job. And it's the community that are calling for this madness to stop on the floodplains. And I know we've got a number of the community from the Clarence listening in tonight, and that's really wonderful. And we have groups like Yamba Can, and we have the Valley Watch, but also groups that aren't just around Yamba. Although Yamba is the site of all this coastal development, nearly the whole of the Clarence Valley's floodplain. So, and we've got a lot of existing developments around Grafton and McLean and Brush Grove and a whole lot of places that are built on the river, on the floodplain, because through history, that's where the transport was. The clippers and the boats came up the river, and so everything was built on the floodplain. So we can't suddenly take everything off the floodplain. But what we can do is make sure we don't keep putting more and more people out on the floodplain, particularly in areas like this. This is where all the development's happening in what they call the Waiyura, the West Yamba Urban Release Area. Now, that started in 1995, and basically 2010 was when it was approved by the department or the planning minister. And there's other slides here that'll show you all the different developments, but at the moment you can see the 52 seniors units approved. Well, look at all the water. The Clifton Village, 193 homes, that's all fill. This is what, and you can see stop the fill sign up the top there. They're all around Yamba at the moment because people in Yamba and on the road into Yamba have suffered for years from all the truck movements to bring this fill in. So there's a whole lot of impacts. There's the environmental impact, but there's also the social impact. And this is destroying the place. Yamba, a lot of people are not happy to live in Yamba anymore because it's their whole way of life is changing. And you can see the beautiful natural ecosystems in the background. Well, they're all under threat by all this development because of the flooding and the drainage. And we kept getting told that all this fill, it's not going to do any harm. It's fine. You can keep bringing fill in. And because the floodplain is so large, that it won't have any significant effect on the flooding. The problem is it's having a significant effect on the areas close to where the fill's putting in, even if at the end of the day, the level of water in Mulawaya doesn't increase by more than a few centimetres, but even that can be significant. So what we've got is we've got the West Yamba Urban Release Area was approved 2010, and it's now being developed. So what some of the locals and myself and others decided it's time we drew a line around it. And we felt that these areas that have already been approved, despite the fact that they're in the middle of a swamp and on the floodplain, we probably can't do too much about changing what's happening there at this stage. But the state government could do it. The state government could buy them out, and that would be a great idea. But what we decided was that we would try to rezone land that was zoned as residential in this Waiyura area, rezone the areas that haven't already had a DA approval for development on them. And that includes the large area shown there as Kahuna, or 52 to 51 Mile Street. Now, there's been 4 DA approvals for that site to bring in fill, but there's been no housing subdivision approval. So the first ones that were approved, Parklands was approved earlier, so that there's a lot of fill there, and it's, you know, what, 3-4 meters of fill, and they've got all these. It's like a prison. You drive down the road and there's this massive big concrete wall, and so we'll go to the next slide if we could. Okay, so at the moment, the Kahuna one, as I said, it's with the Northern Region Planning Panel, but they haven't provided all the information that they need for it to be approved yet. So I mean, really, in my opinion, it should not be approved. Look at the condition of the area when it's flooding. I mean, so the amount of fill that has to be brought in is just phenomenal. We've also had another one recently submitted, which is the 120 cars drive, and that one's 216 manufactured home, estate, and community facilities, and it says it's not approved, but what that means is that there's no approval yet. It has been submitted to council, and that's being worked through. So you can see they're moving down. Cars Drive is that nice river down the middle there. That's a road, and so this area should never have been developed. Should never have been developed. And so what I tried to do, we got legal advice. Sue Higginson, who's an Upper House Green MLC, also was the director of the Environmental Defenders Office. She gave us advice that if we were to back zone or rezone the areas that haven't already been approved for housing, that we would not be liable for any compensation. So I took that to the councillors, and they said, well, you know, that's all very well, but we need our own legal advice. So we sought that from local government legal, and they came back and said we could rezone the whole lot, even the areas that have had the approval on them, but we couldn't take away the DA approvals. So to be realistic, we decided we would try to rezone those areas that don't already have a development approval for housing. So so in December 2022, I had a notice of motion moved to the council that we seek that legal advice. We got the advice back in February of this year, and in March I put up a notice of motion to back zone or rezone the areas as suggested, the ones that didn't already have a housing subdivision. Now, two of the councillors, we've got 9 councillors, 2 of them had a conflict of duty, which means they couldn't vote on this in the council chamber, so they left the chamber, which left 7 councillors, and only 2 of us voted for my notice of motion. One of the other councillors was singing the praises of my notice of motion, but voted against it and said it was premature and all this. We got all these other studies to come, and so it's been very frustrating. So yeah, I mean, I don't have all the answers, but I'm not giving up. And really what should be happening is over 12 months ago, we had the Prime Minister and the then Premier state that there should be no more development on the floodplain, and nothing's happened. They are reviewing the floodplain manual, but it's just moving deck chairs on the Titanic. It's not going to achieve anything. You're still going to allow development on the floodplain. Now, the interesting thing about this development is I'm an ecologist, and that's my passion, but a lot of this site has already been cleared. A lot of the biodiversity is already gone. What I don't want to do as a councillor, or as a, you know, I have responsibilities to the community as well as the environment. And if we put thousands of more people out here on the fill, and it's 9 years of fill it will take to fill the whole of the West Yamba area. 9 years. There's already been 4 or 5 years of truck movements, houses cracking and roads being destroyed. So what will happen is once these developments, if they all get approved, there will be all these houses sitting high and dry on the fill, but the Yamba Road will get cut and areas all around it will be cut. So we'll have all these people stuck out there on this wetland, sitting high and dry, but not being able to go anywhere. And a lot of these people will be elderly people. And then the SES do not have the ability to service all these extra people. So it's a total madness. And apart from the environmental impacts, it's a total madness from the social and economic impacts as well, because last time the floods happened in 2022, the road was cut for nearly a week. And the supermarket ran out of food. I know the person that got the last potato in Yamba. And so, you know, all this madness in terms of development has got to stop. The only way we can stop it really is to lobby the state government and to try to get more councillors elected who are concerned about what we're doing. I think that's important. We've got September 2024 local government elections. I think some of the young people on here might decide to put their hand up. It's very frustrating. It's particularly if you get on with a lot of very conservative councillors. Yeah, it drives you around the twist. But if you get on council, you can make some decisions that may help to protect some of these areas. So I don't know that I need to say much more other than, you know, the floodplains are just that. They're a plain that floods. Quite simple. You don't put houses on it. You don't clear the vegetation on it. You know, it's all part of the natural ecosystem, and we're trying to manipulate things too much, and it's to our detriment. And I'm happy for anyone to contact me later if they want more detail about it all. But we have some really active groups in the Clarence who are working on these issues. It's not just me. I'm a spokesperson for them in the sense that I'm on council, but there's a lot of hard work being done by a lot of people. So, and we're linked into the coastal group as well. And I know that Sue Higginson, I think now has the responsibility for planning and the environment, I think, and it was Kate Furman. So I'm not sure whether Sue's now getting involved in that group. So yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions, but I probably could rave on all night, but I won't. Thanks.
Greg, that was a fantastic presentation. Thanks so much for joining us. I'll just hop straight into questions because there are quite a number. Firstly, from Camilla, down from, she's from Keep Jervis Bay Unspoilt, and she has asked whether or not Jacob and Jordan can do a screening down in Jervis Bay, and whether or not she can share the link around from YouTube. She says that her community is dealing with many similar zombie DA issues. So maybe I'll put her in contact also with Cherry, as well as the young duo from down south, because I'm not sure if Jervis Bay is a part of your campaign yet, Cherry. No? Okay, we'll put them in contact with you. Then we have Jill. So the question from Jill Green is there any way of finding where there are other old development approvals that are still current in a particular local government area? Maybe that's one for Greg.
Yeah, look, you know, councils are wonderful places to hide information. And as a councillor, we get told very little. So, but yeah, all you can do is go to the council and ask. But you know, it may, if there's all these developments that were approved years ago, there may not be a lot of local knowledge, particularly if staff have changed. So yeah, half the time it is only when something starts to happen that you know that oh, this was approved so many years ago. And we've had a few developments too that were approved years ago. And this is the problem as councillors. We really can't do anything to stop the destruction. If the approval was given to remove vegetation or to whatever they're doing 20 years ago, as long as they've started the development in some way, and it doesn't have to be very much, as we've heard earlier. I've had numerous people contact me about Wamba Woods, you know, near Iluka and places, you know, that they're knocking down all koala habitat, and there is nothing we can do about it as councillors. So we have to make sure that the decisions from now on are the right decisions. And all we can do is lobby the actual developers to try to limit what they're doing. And, you know, if there's no social license for what they're doing, and hopefully they'll realise that. But we've also got to work out where we're going to put all these people too, because there's a lot of people wanting houses. And, you know, with the floods, a lot Lismore and places like that, people are looking for where they can live outside of the floodplains as well. So it's a real challenge. It's not an easy answer, but you know, at least people are looking at it and working to try to save the areas.
Thanks, Greg. After I go through the few questions that I have here, maybe it might be a great idea to get into a conversation on what reform might look like, or what should it look like at a state level. From Leslie, she's asking, is there any reason why the Federal Environment Protection and Biodiversity Act cannot be applied to this development? I can't remember if she's referring to Southwest Rocks or the Tura Beach, but they're quite similar experiences. That's another one for Greg to answer.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, well, it's got to go to the federal. It's got to have certain features that are protected under the EPBC Act, and then if there's a number of those, then it's what becomes a controlled activity, and then the federal department has to assess it. But you have to have significant species covered by the EPBC Act. It mightn't be a whole lot of species, but you have to have, koalas are now covered and flying foxes and things like that. So you really need to make sure that the studies are done properly. One thing that I've found in the Clarence Valley is that a lot of, under the state legislation, the Biodiversity Conservation Act, a lot of damage can be done without it actually bringing in the provisions of the Act. So, and a lot of survey. I worked as an ecologist and did flora and fauna studies, and I look at some of these reports that are accepted by council and the government. Even some of the state government departments accept them, and they're hopeless. They haven't done enough field work. They've walked over the site on one day, which could equate to 8 hours, but it might equate to 1 hour. So that's why people have to be really onto it in terms of making sure that the studies that are presented are actually, they've actually done some work, and that because they can fly under the radar, and that's part of the problem. We had an example in the Clarence River where an old prawn farm was proposed to be reinstated as a prawn farm, and 15 years ago, and there were so many threatened species covered, or migratory species covered by the EPBC Act, that it had to go to the federal government as a controlled activity. But when the same site was proposed to be subdivided for 4 houses, the consultant didn't find any species covered by the EPBC Act, and therefore it was approved by council, because despite the fact that I got a lot of information in about the species that were there, it still got approved. So it's very frustrating, but I think we just got to look at these reports, make sure that the ecological reports are done properly. And as I say, in some cases they can get away with it because of the legislation. And we're going to talk later about legislation, and that's one of the aspects we need to tighten that up.
Fantastic. And Robin Flynn just put in the chat as a call out to anyone who wants to get involved in the Turos Heads campaign. If you can just contact Robin at Friends of Coila. Is it Coila? Did I pronounce that right? COILA @gmail.com to join in their local campaign. And then we have Lynn Cairns, who is from Yamba Can. And she is also, wait, hold on, let me have a look. She said she would like to know more information about the details of the original developed application for Tura Beach. What did it involve, please? That's for Jacob or Jordan.
Yeah. So the land was purchased back in the 80s when heaps of land was being plucked up by developers in the Bega Valley, and was held on to. Well, the development was approved in 89 under the ownership of the original buyer, and then it was passed on in 2008 to a big Melbourne developer, RCL Group, and still the development stood. The consent remained valid, and we've had similar a similar thing happen in Tura Beach. The consent has survived because of very minimal works over the years. No substantial clearing or any tangible, physical, observable progress has been made that we can see, but there must have been soil surveys or minimal fencing that's ensured its survival for 33 years. And so now we're left with an approval from 33 years ago, and a construction certificate issued by council that can be acted upon at any moment. So we're in a precarious situation because of this common situation, which is that ancient legislation is still the basis for developments all up and down the coast, which is just plain dangerous.
So thanks for that, Jacob. Greg, would you like to share some thoughts on what reform should look like? And I guess one thing that pops to mind is that someone mentioned that, I can't find it, but that you'd even have to put in a GIPA in some instances to find out some of these, the nature of some of these developments. Do you think there needs to be a bit more transparency, like a register of all the developments that's easily accessible to the public? Anyway, over to you. That's just a thought.
Yeah, look, I think Sue Higginson's looking at what reforms are needed, and I think we have a Labor government, and hopefully they're more open to some reform in this field, because like the exemptions for clearing, like on rural lands, are just outrageous. There's so much clearing goes on. And then we've had it all because of bushfires, and you can now clear well inside your boundary. So there's the whole thing needs to be reviewed, and I think the state government may well be looking at reviewing all the environmental legislation. And I think people like Sue Higginson, who's got all that legal knowledge as well as ecological knowledge, will be really valuable in that. We've just got to make sure that we're not losing any more environment. Like we can't afford to see the bulldozers clearing any more natural bushland. We've just pushed it beyond the limits. And so we've got to make sure that any developments that go on are not on floodplains, are not in areas that at the present time have got bushland. Now, we really need to tighten up the legislation to be able to do that. And so we need it's not just, fiddling around the edges. We need a complete overhaul of the Biodiversity Conservation Act. And, it's got some good points, but one thing it's got, which really needs to be reviewed, is this idea of offsets. And offsets don't work. If you're clearing land and then you protect a bit of land somewhere else that's already there, it's a net loss. So there's things like offsets need to be reviewed. I just think they need to be removed completely. And we've just got to stop clearing natural ecosystems. We've done so much of it. Now, I know that sounds radical. It probably doesn't sound radical to the panel or to a lot of people listening, but we've got to get that through to the broad community that it's not radical. We just stop destroying ecosystems. We're in the 6th great extinction caused by us. We've got to stop it. I'm sorry if that didn't give you a lot of sort of technical detail, but, completely overhaul. That's what we need.
Fantastic. I've just added a copy in the chat of NPA's submission into the Biodiversity Conservation Act review, which does touch on some of these issues to do with land clearing and more broad reform tonight. There's another comment in the chat from John down in Jervis Bay, who said they managed to get the Federal Environment Minister to visit a site down there, which is now seeing the transfer of an area into the Jervis Bay National Park. Congratulations, John. That's a fantastic win. So yeah, excellent idea, obviously, being able to get a state or federal environment minister to these areas. But that's always going to be a bit of a challenge. But I can imagine it's the aspirations for all these communities to try and get Penny Sharp or Tanya up to their area. But yes, congratulations down there in Jervis Bay. And then Beth has also mentioned in the Blue Mountains, so they have a zombie DA, which she's calling a zombie zoo because it includes a zoo and resort. She says it's a serious issue that the local council has bypassed this zoo and resort. And she's put a bit more detail in the chat, but she's just asking for advice on what this community can do. So I guess, maybe again from you, Greg, what are the first few steps that you would advise on any communities or any representatives out there who are new to campaigning on these issues?
Well, I think firstly, go to the local council, and if you've got Green councillors or councillors of other political parties that will listen to you. I know Blue Mountains does have some Green councillors, and I'll be chatting to them first to get advice. Without knowing the details of the development, it's hard to know just what action you could take and just what impacts are likely to be there. But presumably there would be an ecological study, and just have to make sure that that's a rigorous study, that it's more than just a one-day walk over a site to see what plants and animals are there. And, you know, when I did a lot of my ecological studies, I wouldn't do anything less than a 5-day fauna and flora survey. And that in itself is only just a small picture into what's there, but it gives you a much better idea than if you just walk over a site for a day. So I'd be just looking at the DA proposal, make sure, and there's not just flora and fauna issues, there's a whole lot of other issues, like depending on drainage or other impacts that could be there as well. So, and a zoo, I don't know, that it's probably got its own particular issues that need to be addressed as well.
Fantastic, Greg. And Cherry and Lara, or Jacob or Jordan, do you have any advice to any of the other groups who've joined the call tonight?
I was just going to suggest Lara might have the same point, but to get in touch with either Lara or myself about getting on board with these paper petitions, because the idea is that New South Wales Parliament will receive an onslaught of, a dozen of these smaller petitions, but the Environment Minister actually has to address them one by one. And then it illustrates the depth and breadth of this issue across the state. So we can give you more info, but we're all going to do it simultaneously and then submit it at the same time so that it's addressed one after the other, each of these petitions. Lara, did you have more to add?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Essentially, at the moment, we've got 6 locations or community groups working on these petitions, and we can have more. They're paper petitions. They need sort of 500 signatures to get a response from the planning minister. And where the aim is that we're working with Sue Higginson's office. The aim is that Sue Higginson's going to take them to the Legislative Council. We're planning to have them all completed by the end of July. So if you are in a place that is facing zombie developments and you think that you can get 500 signatures on a piece of paper by the end of July, get in touch with us. Basically, what you need to do is just a few points about the issues you're facing, and then sort of 4 asks, like 4 things that you want the Legislative Council to do. And it might be like review this specific DA and put like a hold on it, or whatever the ask is. And then we send that through to Sue's office. They create a petition for us, and then we're all going to go out and collect signatures.
That's a fantastic initiative. And since we're going on a tour of the 6 South Coast communities, I think that'd be a wonderful time to at least plant the seed. We're going in early July, and so I'm thinking Crunch Time can be an ambassador for the petition, make that a part of this pilgrimage that we're going on. So please get in touch with me about that. I'd be really happy to set that off in the South Coast communities. And I'm just going to pop a message into the chat with my contact details, a link to the website crunchtime oz.org, and a Google Drive link for the flyer for anybody to download and share. We're sort of in the promotional stage for our tour, and it's going to be about getting the word out there and finding those young change makers that we can run this workshop with, and hopefully, plant many, many seeds all up and down the South Coast that will go into something unstoppable.
Oh, really exciting. I think this is an exciting outcome tonight to get everyone focused on a campaign goal. So yeah, I think it's absolutely fabulous. I'll get Sam to be in touch with you all as well in terms of being able to write articles for Nature News and to be able to promote this information. For those who are really interested in tonight's topic, next month we're going to have a special webinar dedicated to Western Sydney on Macarthur Georges River region, where the local NPA branch has been fighting unbridled urban development and are really worried about the future of the koala. They have had a major success in terms of getting the Georges River National Park area commitment from the Labor government, which is exciting, but clearly that's never enough to ensure the survival of our endangered species. So I highly recommend when we send out that link that you join to support the Western Sydney community. So I'm going to wrap it up now and just say thank you to all of our speakers and to everyone who has joined us tonight and who is who's going to continue their support for these various communities who have joined us. If by chance you miss out on someone's contact or email address, just write to conservation@npa nsw.org.au. and hopefully that will get to me and I can put you in touch with the relevant speaker from this evening. So thanks again, everyone. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you again at the next webinar. Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys.
Okay, thanks.
So much.